Greetings, it's the Questing GM, and I'm back for another video continuing our prep quest series for Out of the Abyss. And now we will be moving on to chapter 9, which is Mantol-Derith. So just to recap back of in the last chapter and in the last video, when the PCs have agreed to re-enter the Underdark and to find a solution from all the demon lord problems, and they have met with King Brueno at Gondogrim, who has discussed with them his plans of how how they will go about this demon lord problem, and he suggested that the PCs need to find a way to reach Gravenhollow, which is a stone giant library that supposedly contains all the secrets that contains within the Underdark, so they can understand where the demon lords came from. But in order to get to Gravenhollow, they need to get the cooperation of the Zentarim, as one particular Zentarim member who actually has a magical ring that can actually lead the PCs to find the Gravenhollow. And if the PCs do not have the ring, then they will not be able to find the library. So naturally, it means that upon leaving from Gondogrim, the next destination, according to the book at least, is to actually travel to Mantol-Derith, which is a secret trading outpost that is also considered something like a neutral ground between the Sneflabin, the Duergar, and the Drow, and recently the Zentarim on the Black Network, who has taken over the surface trade outpost in Mantol-Derith. So traveling to Mantol-Derith, or to get to Mantol-Derith, is actually a pretty long trek from Gondogrim to Mantol-Derith, and the chapter practically begins in page 132 to 100 all the way to 142. So it's about 10 pages worth of reading, but I'll just try my best to summarize some of the key points that you probably need to pay attention to on this chapter. So coming back to how to get to Mantol-Derith now. The books that's under page 133 under reaching Mantol-Derith. So the book actually kind of suggests that if you do get the cooperation of the Zentarim way back in Gondogrim, then they will actually point you into Mantol-Derith, telling you that they have an agent there. I believe it's by the name of Gazrim Duloc, yeah, who actually has the ring. So if you do get the cooperation of the Zentarim, they would actually take you out to the surface and bring you about 118 miles east of Gondogrim, into the Sobrin Hills on the surface, and then you go down into a cave that leads you 200 miles further down, and they will take you to one of the secret entrances into Mantol-Derith that the Zentarim knows about. The book doesn't particularly, in the Gondogrim chapter, the book doesn't particularly give any good indications of what if you don't get the Zentarim's cooperation to get to Mantol-Derith. But if you look at the entrances to Mantol-Derith itself, there are actually a few suggested there are a few suggested people who actually knows about the trading outpost. So the most obvious ones would be the other trading partners within Mantol-Derith themselves. So the Duergar actually know about their own entrances into Mantol-Derith. The Drow know their own entrances into Mantol-Derith. The Deep Gnomes also know their own entrances into Mantol-Derith as well. So if for whatever reason your plan, if the PCs do not actually get the information out from the Zentarim, then they may actually have to travel back into one of the previous cities they have visited, namely Gracklstad or Blindenstone. And for whatever reason, if they actually want to go to Mantol-Branson to meet with the Drow, and you can sort of build a separate scenario on how they get that information out with the traders from these respective communities, and then find their way back into Mantol-Derith. So Mantol-Derith technically is actually by the Dark Lake, so you could actually reach Mantol-Derith, through underground tunnels, or you can actually reach it by the Dark Lake, with whoever knows where it is. But the book doesn't actually give you that. The book doesn't really gloss or provide any materials if you're going for that route of finding Mantol-Derith. So it is going by the assumption that you actually do manage to get the Zentarim to work on your side. And once they reach Mantol-Derith, there are about like 4 different entrances, and depending who is their guide to Mantol-Derith, then they may meet up with I mean each entrance has their own password password to pass through, and if you do not say if the characters do not say the password, they actually get targeted by a disintegration spell, and they can actually get outright killed right at the entrance, which is detailed in page 135 when it talks about the secret entrances. So I don't think I need to really go through each of the entrances, but if there's one particular entrance that is a bit more interesting, it would probably be entrance 1C, and you will need to reference the map on page 134. And 1C is the northeast entrance, and there's nothing. It's just like any other entrance, except this is actually where the PCs will actually be able to meet with a strange NPC by the name of Sladis Vadir. Now, Sladis Vadir is actually a member of the Almoro Enclave. She's a druid, and as all NPCs within Mantol-Derith itself, they have all certain degrees of madness. I think Sladis Vadir is actually suffering from indefinite madness, and the PCs will actually can try to cure her for it. Sladis Vadir is actually one of the, I would call, the side bunch of NPCs that are not directly related to the main organizations within Mantol-Derith, but she does have a small side quest to play that is more clearly stated out at the end of the chapter in 142. So she's actually one NPC that you may want to keep an eye out, but you will not be able to but according to the book, you will not be able to meet her if you do take up guidance from the Zentarim to reach Mantol-Derith. So the way to find that entrance with Sladis Vadir is if you arrive by boat, I believe, if you arrive by boat through the Dark Lake. And I guess I'll just pretty much spoil it here right now. What's the role of Sladis Vadir within the Mantol-Derith chapter? Because after you've completed the chapter, Sladis Vadir actually tries to bring the characters to a zoo that she has sort of set up, and that's where you kind of meet up with another member of the Emerald Enclave called Amaranth Coppervein, and and although they have they have gone mad, and they are trying to put the PCs in to appreciate their zoo and have to pay for it, but they do actually carry some magical items within them. So that's a possible route if your PCs want to, whatever ways, wants to get rid of them or kill them and take their stuff. Then that is a possible consideration as a DM. So once the PCs have entered into Mantol-Derith, and depending on where they enter from, they may actually have to go through a trench that actually has an elevator that leads up to the main cavern. But if we are going with the assumption that the PCs are going to have the Zentarim guiding them in, then that's where they will enter into the main cavern, and then that's actually where they will notice that nothing's going well within Mantol-Derith. And if you read the introduction of the chapter, page 132, in the introduction chapter, basically, Mantol-Derith has been taken over by another demon lord who has been spreading his madness around, and that demon lord is Fras Ublu, Princess of Lies and Deception. But his influence on Mantol-Derith is a bit different from the other demon lords met in the previous chapters, in the sense that has not manifested his physical form within the Underdark. Instead, he's managed to sort of trap himself into a gem, a black gem, and as the gem is passed around between different members of the Mantol-Derith communities, between the different races, anyone who touches the gem actually suffers the indefinite madness. And it's because there's different members of each race that has actually put their hands into the gem and suffered the madness, and there's actually caused a giant misunderstanding between the various factions, and it's actually turned into a full on blown war between each of the factions. So to sort of build the story, and I think it's according to the book at least, I think it's kind of important for you to really understand how how Fras Uglu's influence has been spreading throughout the entire community. Basically, it started off with a Duergar ale merchant by the name of Pringo Musgard, who actually found the gem, touched it, got his indefinite manners, and then wanted it to be appraised by a deep gnome mage by the name of Yanta Coxrock. Now, if you remember from my Blingdenstone video and chapter, Yanta Coxrock is actually, I believe, a member of the Stoneheart Enclave. She is supposed to be the presiding priestess in charge of one of the temples in Blingdenstone. So she is currently the representative now within Mantol-Derith, and that's why you cannot find her in Blingdenstone. So when the Duergar merchant brought the gem to her for identification, she touched it, and then she got her madness, and she decided to keep the gem, but decided to keep the gem, but at the same time tried to pay off the Duergar for it, and obviously the Duergar merchant was not happy about that, and there was a bit of tension going on, and the Duergar merchant wanted his gem back, but Yanta Coxrock was not willing to give it to him, and as a result of that, Yonta's apprentice, Flink Thunderbolt, took the gem and wanted to trade it with the Drow in return for some rare spell components that he believed Yanta Coxrock wanted to use to get rid of the Duergar, which obviously is not the case, because the moment that Flink touched the gem, he also suffered his indefinite madness, and that's his delusion of what he's supposed to do with the gem. And as he was heading his way towards the Drow Enclave to make the trade, the gem was actually stolen from him by a gargoyle, and the gargoyle also goes mad as a result of touching the gem, and he passes it to a Drow assassin within the Drow Enclave, and he passed it to the Drow assassin as a sign of love. And as the Drow assassin received the gem, she got inflicted with the madness, and now she believes that the gem is supposed to be payment to actually kill a beholder that actually works for the Zhentarim, and she's actually setting up an ambush at the Zhentarim part of the trade enclave. But as she was doing that, the tension between the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes goes into violence, and the Zhentarim, sensing that there is, with the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes wiping each other out, they figured that if they could get rid of both of those two factions, then they could share Mantol-Derith between the Drow and the Zhentarim. So the Drow and the Zhentarim are actually preparing for a meeting between both sides, but both of them are not knowing that the Drow assassin actually is also preparing an ambush to kill one of the Drow agents, one of the Zhentarim agents who is a beholder. So that's basically the flow of events of how the gem has actually managed to spread its influence within Mantol-Derith, and the most important thing to know is that who actually has the gem right now, which is the Drow assassin by the name of Kinyel Drugir. Now, because why is it necessarily important to know this flow is because as the PCs reach into Mantol-Derith and they enter into the main cavern, and they see the market has been turned upside down, then they will actually witness the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes actually in a fight, and they kind of get to choose sides, or they try to avoid the conflict altogether, and then they will be that will set them on a path to find out what actually happened within Mantol-Derith and why it's in such a mess. And it's important for you to lead the PCs through the story of how the gem got into Mantol-Derith and where the gem currently is right now, because one way to diffuse the entire situation between the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes is actually to bring the gem back. But obviously anyone who touches the gem is going to have a chance of getting madness, and the DC save is actually pretty high, so it's actually quite unlikely. I mean, the I'm guessing the assumption is more erring on anyone who touches the gem is not likely going to be able to survive it without suffering indefinite madness. So uh, maybe by going through the stories of and the people who tell them what they did with the gem is going to give the PCs a heads up that that touching the gem may not be the best ideas. Now, besides the main caverns, the Mantol-Derith is pretty much divided into pretty much you could say like four corners, and each corner is being held by each of the races that are trading within Mantol-Derith. So the first one obviously would be the Drow, and each of them have their own enclave. So there's a Drow enclave, there's a Duergar enclave, there's a Sneffelblin Deep Gnome enclave, and there's a Zentarim enclave. Uh, Basically, because of the open conflict between the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes, both obviously both of those races have already sort of retreated into their respective enclaves, and the Duergar is actually planning an actual full force attack onto the Deep Gnome enclave. And as I said, because of this conflict, the Drow and the Zentarim are trying to take the opportunity to sort of ally among themselves to get rid of both Duergar and Drow. And the book sort of just details who's where at each of the enclaves, and the sort of things that they have available for trade, or otherwise also known as things they have available for stealing by the PCs at each enclave. And it really depends how you want to lead the PCs through, whether you want to let them interact with each of the enclave one by one, or maybe you just want to let them choose which enclave do they want to side with, or if they are coming in with the known assumption or known expectation that they are just here to find Gazim Bullock and just get the magical ring out of him, then they will probably try to find the Zentarim enclave and just go straight there. But naturally, if they go to the Zentarim enclave, and they would find the Drow assassin setting up the ambush, and depending whether they choose to stop the ambush or to see what's happening and then let the ambush take place, there is a possible battle that happens, and it may end up with Gazrim dead, if things don't play out as planned. At least that's what the book says. Whether the PCs want to help the Duergar and the Deep Gnomes is not necessarily mentioned, but they do provide the information of if they go into the Duergar enclave, and they would actually find Yanta Coxrock there, and if they save her, what she tells them about the gem. And then if they go to the Drow enclave, they will actually meet up with Flink, who tells them what he did with the gem. And obviously the gargoyle probably won't be able to speak, but then once you're on the path of Flinks, who is the last person who held the gem before it was given to the Drow. So that's kind of where the pieces will connect, but the book doesn't really sort of lead you into a certain direction. That's generally how things play out in Mantol-Derith. And generally after that, the moment the PCs get the ring from Gazrim Dulok, whether he's alive or not, then that pretty much the end of the chapter, in the sense that they can leave and now they can go and find Gravenhollow. A few other side quests. On page 142 at the end of the chapter, there's a few other side quests mentioning about if they meet with a deep gnome by the name of Pebbles, who is somewhat beholder fanatic, and he's trying to collect some eye stalks from the beholder who works for the Zentarim. What happens if you meet up with Pebbles, and what happens if the beholder gets killed or not killed during the confrontation between the Drow ambush and the Drow assassin and the Zentarim. And then there's also another side quest involving a Drow, I believe it's a Drow mage, or another Drow assassin by the name of Zilchin. Zilchinquileptin. He's a drow who has actually been had half of his body sort of turned acided by half of his body acided by a black pudding, and he's a kleptomaniac. And the PCs actually do sort of have him around them. He actually does try to steal something, but if they work with him at the end of the chapter, he sort of leads them to a small cache of potions of vitality. And uh, I guess that's pretty much the summary of Mantol-Derith. Is actually depending how the PCs approach it and find out what's going on. It the book has pretty much written or set the amount of NPCs and monsters that are available there. So it sort of prepares the possibility of combat after combat after combat after combat, if the PCs are not too keen on investigating what's causing the whole madness to spread around Mantol-Derith. And if the PCs actually do assassinate, they do stop the drow ambush and actually get the gem back to return to the Duergar, they may actually find out that the Fras Ublu is actually inside the gem, and they can actually do something about it to the gem. All in all, and this is probably the most shocking part about my running of Mantol-Derith, is I completely changed the entire chapter. I completely I didn't like the direction of where Mantol-Derith was going from the start to finish, and I didn't like the fact that the PCs could actually have a demon lord within their hands, and being able to do whatever they want with it. And technically, if the PCs were keen, they will actually, and the book does give a few pointers about destroying the gem. And if they destroy the gem, then Fras Ublu actually gets sent back to the abyss, and that's actually pretty much the end of his role in the entire adventure. So I just didn't really like how Mantol-Derith was written, and where it was placed in the second half of the adventure as a whole. And that's for a few reasons. Number one, if you look at the Underdark map on page 19, you will notice that Mantol-Derith is beside the Dark Lake, and if you look, the distance between Gauntlegrim to Mantol-Derith is actually a very long distance. That's why they provided that that part of the solution of traveling overland on the surface with the Zentarian guide to reach a surface cave and then enter down into Mantol-Derith. And if the PCs had to trek through the Underdark to reach Mantol-Derith, that's actually a very sizable trek to get there, and that would take a big amount of time to even reach that destination. And if you notice, once the PCs actually acquired the ring from Gazrim-Dulok, they actually had to travel all the way back in the same direction back to Gauntlegrim, and where Gravenhollow is. So Gravenhollow is actually closer to Gauntlegrim than from Gauntlegrim to Mantol-Derith. So I didn't like the idea that the PCs had to trek a long way to Mantol-Derith and then trek a long way back to go and find Gravenhollow. I wanted a much smoother transition from Gauntlegrim to Gravenhollow, and then the next location after that, after Gravenhollow, which actually seems to make more sense to me than having to do a double back from Mantol-Derith. So I pretty much also, and to sort of facilitate that the importance of, I wasn't completely discarding the entire chapter of Mantol-Derith. There were still some good materials found within the chapter itself that I figured that I could still use, but I just need to rework a lot of things. And one of the main things I reworked is that I actually took out the Fras Ublu gem from Mantol-Derith, and I have placed it somewhere else, and I'll talk about that in a couple more chapters, I think. And I feel that that's actually at least for me, that feels like a much better place to put the gem rather than in Mantol-Derith, with the possibility to be in the hands of the characters. And also, one other aspect of Mantol-Derith that I changed quite drastically is that when the PCs got to Mantol-Derith, it was not in a mess. Trade was still going on, so there was I was more emphasizing on the challenge of getting to Mantol-Derith, and also once they're in Mantol-Derith, they had something else they needed to do which involved trading, because I figured that, since they've made it all the way to a trading outpost, a secret trading outpost in Underdark, why not engage in a little bit of some trading to get what they want? So what I did was, I sort of I used the respective the things that each enclave have, and I created a list, a table, uh, and I sort of tried to do this trading puzzle, in the sense that, how do you trade? You are given a small amount of capital or maybe some basic goods, and then you are just supposed to trade that up for a thing, for something more valuable to the people who wants them. This is sort of like this is sort of that idea of uh, how to trade from a pencil to a house. If you have actually heard of this trading puzzle or trading game that uh, by knowing who you're trading with and knowing what things are valuable to certain people, you may actually get a higher value item back in return that can be used to trade for something of even more higher value. So I decided to go with that. I decided that it fits the theme of Mantol-Derith a little bit better, because Mantol-Derith has a few rules that they actually observe when it was functioning properly. And one of that rules was that they cannot use coins. You cannot trade things with coins. Everything has to be done through barter. So I felt that if that was an interesting challenge, but my players weren't too keen about it when I used it on them, and they felt that was actually probably one of the more frustrating parts of the adventure when I did my idea. But I'm just throwing the idea out there just in case someone thinks that there may be a better way to do Mantol-Derith, instead of just going in there, finding everything's a mess, and then just fighting, combat after combat, and to discover a very relatively flimsy plot regarding about a gem that the PCs may not have any interest in, and they may actually just bypass a whole good chunk of the material that's actually available within Mantol-Derith in itself. Uh, so I guess that's pretty much it, because as I said, I can't really detail much about. I mean, given that I've never actually run Mantol-Derith as written, I can't really give any real suggestions about how to run this chapter with my experience. But I've already given you the book's version of flow of events of what the book is probably intending the characters to go through when they're in Mantol-Derith. But in any case, if you prefer to stick with what the book sort of provides you with, I would say that there is actually the book actually does list, spend a good deal of pages and information just detailing about what's exactly within each enclave and what's within each shed. And if you are running the adventure as it is, this is actually a good place for a lot of supplies to be had, and for trading. And if they have, if the PCs are carrying a good army with them, then they would definitely need to find the right amount of supplies to supply the entire army with the right equipment and so forth. But other than that, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for Mantol-Derith. I really have not much to say. Although if there's one other thing that I also added on into Mantol-Derith is that after the PCs traded for what they needed, then they actually had to sort of exchange the things that they got to get to a mind flayer colony that I just inserted, because I figured that I need to find a place to put mind flayers within the adventure, because the book doesn't really give a good avenue in that, and that's actually a very good place for you to introduce mind flayers or even Orcus and his raising of a dead elder brain, and that quest line if you need a place for it to put. So I think that'll be all for tonight. I mean, I can't really help that much. But if you're more interested in how I changed Mantol-Derith, or why I made the change, I think I'll get to that in a future more chapters in. So the next chapter is going to be chapter 10, which is a descent into the depths, which is basically the second chapter of the first half, which is just expanding on what is it like to travel with a expedition force, what are the kind of different kind of random encounters that can happen, and what the PCs can do within those areas while traveling in the Underdark with that expedition force. So I don't believe I have actually a lot to say about that as well, because but I think I'll just share for chapter 10 what I did instead, rather than uh, what the book provides. So I guess it's the Questing GM signing out for now, and I'll hope to see you in the next one pretty much very soon. Bye.